Welcome everyone to the Distilled Spirits Council Ask the Expert webinar series. I am Ross Mulcairn, Director of Member Services and Business Development at the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, also known as DISCUS. Today's topic is BEValuator, the first automated valuation engine for spirits, with our friends from the Beaudette Beverage Group. We are recording this webinar today, so that will be available on the events page of the DISCUS website and in our member portal, as well as on our YouTube channel. For those of you who are not as familiar with DISCUS, DISCUS is the leading voice and advocate for our members and the distilled spirits industry overall. DISCUS provides a wealth of resources and services, including this webinar series, that aims to educate and share relevant trends, ideas, resources, discussions, and opportunities for people throughout the distilled spirits industry. All of these webinars are available at distilledspirits.org/events. If you are looking for upcoming ones, you can go there. If you have any questions about the resources that DISCUS can provide or are interested in joining DISCUS, please reach out to membership@distilledspirits.org. There you can find out about our annual conference next March, the new craft edition liquor handbook for sale exclusively for DISCUS members, which we will be discussing more at this time next week, and so much more. Now, with that housekeeping taken care of, I want to welcome our experts today. First we have John Beaudette. John brings decades of hands-on experience in the beverage alcohol industry. Today, he oversees the Beaudette Beverage Group, a consortium of beverage-related service, operational, and advisory companies. Mr. Beaudette is the founder and former CEO of MHW Limited. Over the last 25 years, Beaudette MHW has provided U.S. import and distribution services to hundreds of producers and thousands of new, emerging, and established spirits, wine, and beer brands. From 1985 to 1994, John worked with PepsiCo Inc. and its affiliate company, Monsieur Henry Wines, in the distribution of Stolochnaya vodka and other wine and spirit brands. During this period, John held key positions such as Director of Planning for PepsiCo Wines and Spirits International and VP of Finance and CFO for Monsieur Henry Wines Limited. Prior to joining PepsiCo, John was the Manager of Accounting for Somerset Importers, U.S. importers of Tanqueray and Johnnie Walker, and other spirits brands. He served on the board of directors of the National Association of Beverage Importers in Washington, D.C. for 20 years and is a former chairman of the organization. He is also, very importantly, served on the board of directors of the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States here in Washington, D.C. John is a frequent speaker and lecturer at beverage alcohol events around the world. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in accounting from Villanova University and is a CPA in New York. Welcome, John. We also have Matthew Beaudette, who brings over 15 years of experience in the beverage alcohol industry, having held various roles at MHW during his tenure there. His expertise spans all facets of the business, including finance, operations, marketing, compliance, and systems. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Finance from the NYU Stern School of Business. Welcome, Matt. And last but not least, we have Jose Salinas. Jose is a seasoned financial professional with over 15 years of experience in balance sheet strategy and financial risk management within the commercial banking industry. He has earned the Chartered Financial Analyst designation and his Bachelor of Science in Finance and Information Systems from New York University's Stern School of Business. While at NYU, he interned at MHW Limited under the supervision of our friend John Beaudette. Gaining early exposure to the spirits industry, Jose has since advised on valuation engagements for alcohol brands, combining his financial training with an understanding of the strategic considerations that drive acquisition decisions. He brings both his industry experience and technical training to BEValuator, our platform we're learning about today, to help brand owners align with financial planning and long-term value creation. Welcome, everyone. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ross and Luis, for helping set this up. And also thank you to DISCUS. Yes, as you mentioned, I've worked very closely with DISCUS, and to give them a little bit of a shout out, we're going to be talking about brand value and creating brand value in the world of spirits. And boy, DISCUS has been very critical, over these last 5 to 10 years in building value for spirit brands. So anyway, just quickly in terms of the sequence today, I'm just going to give a quick overview of BEValuator and a little bit of why I see the huge opportunity for anybody really playing in the spirits world right now to be close to the tool that BEValuator is. But before I do that, I'll cover some of an overview of where the industry is right now, and then I'll turn it over to Jose for the demonstration of the software platform, and then Matt will take it over from there and talk a little bit about how we price the model and some frequently asked questions that we've already received in the last couple of weeks since we've been operating. And then I'll talk a little bit about Liquid for Life, which is a critical charity that we're all heavily involved in. Anyway, so just jumping to the next slide for a moment. One more over. Okay. I just want to, at the end of the day, what we're really talking about here is we've created, and it's taken a lot of effort, a lot of research, countless hours, building algorithms, looking out over the last 15 to 20 years of transactions in our space, pre and post acquisitions, what metrics were going in, coming out, and so forth. And so the goal was basically to create a model that, if we give that to you, it gives you a strategic edge at a reasonable cost without the heavy costs of consultants and things like that. And why is it critical now? Let me just mention a couple of things that I see in the market and the opportunity today. Again, we're talking about spirits and primarily premium. But right now, we all know about the headwinds. Everybody talks about the headwinds. I won't go into those that we've dealt with for the last 12 to 18 months, and we'll continue to see as we close out this year. But I do see dissipation and opportunity going forward. Spirits today, and has for many, many years now, been leading this industry in so many ways. And again, Discus is a big part of that. Today, we're at about just over 300 million cases, 9-liter cases. And the world, though, is at 2.6 billion. I reference that because if we get any benefit out of this craziness with tariffs, maybe it sets the stage for a level playing field so that our 3,000 distilleries can get more exports down the road. But time will tell there. But I'm hopeful that could happen. One of the things I just wanted to talk about, and it's sort of in the news, we saw a Gallup poll come out today, but and it sort of supports the whole idea of moderation in consumption. We know that benefits premium, super, and ultra premium brands. Okay, the idea that people are drinking less but drinking better has been really around now for 6-7 years. Okay, pre-COVID, and so I view this as a huge opportunity. And part of the timing of why we did BEValuator, because the way we see it right now, premium spirits, and I'm talking about, depending on the category, anything from $25 and up a bottle. Okay, right now, between on and off premise, you're probably somewhere maybe in the 40% range. And that's growing. And I make a note in here, every 1% of shift that you move from, let's say, mid-priced into the premium, is worth 3 million cases. And it's not unlikely that we wouldn't see in the next couple of years, even with moderation, again, people drinking less but better, you could start to see a couple of more points shifting. And there's, potentially 9-10 million cases found there. And I'm just talking about within the spirits category. And RTDs, we really believe, is still a gateway. A lot of that business, the 65 million cases that didn't exist 5 years ago, are here because people moved out of the White Claws, right, the malt-based, and realized, the benefits of a spirit-based product. And so we've got that also to deal with. But very important, again, if you look at the Gallup information that came out today, one important thing to note, the opportunity of share, even within the spirits, and then you look at beer and wine, look at the size difference. Beer today is at 2.6 billion. They have taken it on the chin. Discus talks about that a lot. A lot of the share has moved away from beer into spirits, also wine, but probably more out of beer coming into spirits. So the beer is at 2.6 billion. When I started MHW almost 30 years ago, beer was at 2.6 billion cases. It went to almost 3 billion. Now it's back to 2.6 billion, 30 years. And you look at spirits, when I started, we were at about 150 million cases in the mid to late 90s, and now it's doubled. So the opportunity to get more share for premium products is there. And then lastly, I'll just mention 4 million Americans turn 21 each year. What are they likely, even if 50%, 75%, whatever percentage of those folks are going to drink, are they going to choose beer, wine, or spirits? My bet absolutely is on spirits. And I think others would probably agree with that. If you look also at the whole globe, and we study that too, there'll be 1.5 billion more middle-class consumers looking at India, Asia, and I think about all the phenomenal distilled products here in America. Gosh, we bring in a lot of the imports and they're great, but the distilled spirits that are made here in America from our distilleries, large and small, that opportunity to export, I think, is coming. And with AI and the ability for people around the world to learn about authenticity about brands, I think we're there. Thanks. Sorry, I'm moving fast. I just want to make sure we get just a quick one on premium spirits. This comes from Grand View Research, so you can look out to 2030. You can see it supports what I'm saying, not just in the United States, but also around the world. Next. Next one's good. So why is it critical now? Okay, at my role at MHW for all those years, we worked with some of the large spirit brands that had phenomenal exits. I won't name them all because I'd miss some of them, but we're talking about a couple of billion easily in exit values that I'll call superior exits. Now, those are tough to get. Everyone knows a superior exit or a superior transaction like that. They are rare, no question about it. But they're rare in many cases because some of the early planning and so forth, some of it is not done probably as thorough as it should do. I look at where M&A was in the last 10 years, and I really believe for the premium spirit area, the opportunity in the next 5 to 10 is going to be incredible. And I base that based on the fact that the large and mid-tier companies clearly are losing volume. You see that in stock prices and so forth. They've got a lot of but basically a lot of headwinds to deal with right now. And when you look at what BEValuator's purpose is, that we're out there basically trying to give people a tool that can help them create metrics, monitor metrics that matter, that can create value down the road. I look at big companies, these established players, and I say to myself, okay, if I'm them, what do I do? Most of them have dropped things like ventures and things like that they were supporting before. Wouldn't it make sense for them today, if they can't count on getting back some of the share, some of those cases that they've lost in the last couple of years and may lose again, will they look at potential acquisitions in brands that are maybe in the 40, 30, 40, 50, 75,000 case range, or some of those that have been established longer at 200,000, whatever it is? If those metrics are right, why wouldn't you think about acquiring 4, 5, or 6 of those across categories, knowing that 1, 2, or 3 may pop and turn into the hockey stick, right? But that's only going to happen if the right metrics, if they see the right metrics. And we think we have built in those metrics into BEValuator. Next. Some of the challenges that people face today, clearly, and I know this because some have hired me to do this, it's expensive. You hire consultants and it can take a long process to go through it. And before you know it, 6 months later, it's outdated. Okay, so there's a lot of challenges that go with that. And then a lot of these people who are not using consultants are out there, and you see this in fundraising activities. They're using multiples that make no sense. They're basically taking averages across categories or brands and segments that really don't make any sense at all. They use static information, and then it's very hard to defend with sophisticated investors. So we looked obviously at all of this as part of the rationale for the model we built. BEValuator, the big advantage, we know no two brands are alike. I mean, these are tailored multiples. You can't just throw everything in one box and say this is what comes out for everybody. We're looking at everything. It's all customized based on historical transactions, as I mentioned before, a lot of research. It's dynamic over time. And then we do make sure that the drivers that create value, whether it's in revenue, gross profit, contribution after the marketing, and some of the qualitative functions, when you're answering, you'll see in a couple of minutes, all of those things are transparent, and you get a chance to look at it from the standpoint of what if scenarios and what can I do to improve my value 3, 5, 7 years out. Next. So just summing up for a moment, one of the things we really, really enjoy, and hope you will too, about the ability, the flexibility of testing scenarios, being able to work with revenue, gross profit, and then answering questions and saying to yourself, for example, okay, if I'm getting a premium or discount because of my supply chain, okay, what happens if I have a better supply chain, or I can guarantee growth, or I can guarantee that I can supply my demand. Things like that are built into this thing and will give you a roadmap, we think, to achieving the maximum. I'm going to turn it over to Jose and let him give you a quick demo. I'm sorry I'm moving kind of quick, but I just want to make sure this is the most important part, that you get a chance to see this. Go ahead,
Thank
Jose.
you, John. Thank you. So I'm going to first give an overview of the model, kind of just how it flows and how it's structured. And then we're going to dive right into, I'm sure, what you want to see, which is the actual demo of the application and really just how easy it is to use. But going to this model flow, so step one here, what we have at the core of the BEValuator is this quantitative model. It's using statistics, regression statistics, using high quality historical acquisitions. So we pulled a lot of these multiples and we pulled some of those financials to really try to run some regression statistics to identify what kind of net sales growth creates what kind of value and what cap margin levels create value and what mix of that either heightens value or detracts from value, right? I've been creating financial models for 15 plus years, mostly in the commercial banking industry, but it's all the same. Every time I present a newly developed model to whether it be a board of directors or any kind of executive strategic decision maker, the very first thing I always tell everybody is remember what a model is. It's a simplification of real life outcomes. And the reason I bring this up is that my second point after that is that we have to use an intuitive approach to modeling. And what I mean by an intuitive approach is that you can't just go get a statistician to run some numbers and say, here's how you're going to manage your business, or this is how you're going to make your decisions, right? Really, you need a quantitative guy that sits side by side with a subject matter expert, somebody that really knows the business, somebody that's been that strategic decision maker in the past. That individual is the one that brings the intuition into the model. And so part of that is the challenge, the looking at the variables that are going into the model. What's the structure of the model? Do the outputs really make sense from the perspective of real life decisions? And so, what I really want to get across here is that although this is a quantitative model, John was our expert. I worked with him over the past couple of years here, going back and forth through many model specifications, making sure the data that we were bringing in was high quality data, not some kind of outlier acquisition, but actually something that is representative of the entire industry. Looking through those variables, looking through those specifications, we had well over 20 different candidate models that we then went back to the drawing board and finally had a model selection, and then from there even tailored it in a little bit more. But this really is the brain behind the BEValuator here. It's a mixture of these, it's a quantitative model using regression statistics, but very much bringing in the intuition from John's many decades in the acquisition boardroom, so he knows exactly where those pockets of values lie. So with that, we also knew that no matter, there's always a story that the quantitative data doesn't tell. And if you actually just dive a little bit deeper into what that brand is and what that brand represents, the one that was acquired by a multinational drinks company, you start to see more of those qualitative characteristics. And so we did a qualitative overlay on top of the quantitative model, which represents we call them two scorecards. A quality of growth scorecard, which really is going to assess the brand's ability to maintain growth moving forward, because that's what an acquirer is going to do. Acquirer is going to come in and say, what is core growth and what is unstable growth that I can't maintain moving forward? What is growth at too much of a cost, and what is growth at the right cost? And then a profit stability scorecard, which is kind of paired with that quality of growth, right? Which is, are you able to scale with your potential path forward? Because that's what an acquirer is going to want to look at. Although they may bring efficiencies, scale into the operation, they still want to ensure that there's not a disruption or a wall that you're about to hit, or not, essentially, are your margins going to erode in the future? all this sounds real complicated, but it's really just not that many inputs into our, and we're going to go through that demo, but really within periods, you get this investor ready report that tells this entire story. And really it computes in a matter of minutes, and you have that report ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into the demo now. And so I'm going to pull that up here. So after you register for the BEValuator, you've got your subscription here. This is your home screen. And in your home screen, you got a couple different things going on here. On the left side, if you do have multiple subscriptions, you will be able to bring in multiple brands. If you are a company that has more than one brand, where you're servicing a couple different companies that have different brands, you'll be able to have multiple subscriptions under your account, and you'll see them listed on the left side over here. But once you select one of your brands, you'll see that you have certain brand details, such as your brand name. And so in our example case study here, we have a tequila known as Muestra Tequila, and that the company that owns this particular tequila is known as Grupo Ejemplo. And we put in a launch date here of January 2023. So when you're ready to run a valuation, you simply click Run Valuation, and it brings you into our workflow tool. First thing I want to point out is if you look at the top there, this is very similar to that model flow. So you see how this is all kind of working and flowing through to create your final report. Going back to what John was saying about that scenario analysis. So we originally had built out the model, and then we said, like, we found that we were constantly going in and using it to make an update here. What happens if margins change? What happens if our growth rate is actually higher? We're lower. How does that detract or add to value? And we found that we were very much using it as a scenario tool. So we went ahead and just built that right in. So the very first thing that you see here is a create scenarios screen, where you have an opportunity to name a scenario and a description. So here's name the scenario and go ahead and input a description of that scenario. Now, we know early on you may not always have the right scenario name, so we do have that this tip here that says you can always edit this later. Don't worry about it. Just put a random name here for now and move on. But yeah, so then continue to the next step. And now we're going to get into that. This input financials is really what you're inputting into is that quantitative model that is essentially at the core of the BEValuator here. So, one of the questions that, as we were developing this is not every brand is going to be different. You are going to have some very mature brands, and you're going to have some that are, haven't even sold their first case yet. Startup and really just want to bring in some angel investors, have some, kind of story that they can tell here. And so it becomes a question of, well, how many years of pro forma forecast, how many future years do I really need to put into whether it be from a valuation perspective or just from your conversations with potential investors, what is the right amount, the right number of years? And so we realize that different brands coming in, we have to have a tool that can customize to that brand. So it already knows when you launched based on your brand details earlier. And that launch is really when you sold your first case, not when you first created the brand, the idea of the brand, but rather when you first launched and sold that first case. Based on what your most recent financials are, you would go ahead and put in a month and year here. And so here, this is determining that, okay, this brand is about 2 years old. It asks certain questions. If your brand did exist before the pandemic, you will have an additional question here, whether your sales were heavily impacted by the pandemic. We expect that most of you would probably answer yes to that. But still, throughout that question in there anyways, just to have that flexibility. But here, even if it's outside that pandemic period, we want to ask you, is there something extraordinary about your last year there that you don't want us to overweight that last year? And so we even will take that into account. And so here you can answer that question. We're going to answer it no for now. And you can see here what happens is the first thing it's going to tell you is this is the number of historical years that we recommend that you input, and the number of pro forma years, your forward forecast, that we recommend that you input. So there's a recommendation. There's also a requirement. Like for example, here you'll see the 10 has a drop down. Depending on how you answered some of these questions, it may keep you at 10. It may not let you do less than 10 because it knows that you're going to have that forward forecast to really come up with a good value projection. So we will put limitations where we think the value requires it. But otherwise,
Jose, if I could just add, and that's important because what you learn about brands, obviously, traditionally, brands don't make it overnight. We know that in the spirits world, and oftentimes it's 4 to 7, 8 years before a brand. And so based on some of that historical knowledge that's built into it, it might, that's what Jose is saying, it'll basically guide you a little bit and say, no, you might need, in order to get the valuation you need, you might be in this thing for 7 or 8 years. And you'll just, now it doesn't mean it's always right. You might be able to do better than that, but anyway, guide you a little bit. Sorry, Jose.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the next step there is that it's going to give you your input form based on those recommended number of years and what you've selected. If you had some flexibility there, maybe you dropped it to 9 years, 8 years, because that's what your pro forma currently has. It's going to pop out these boxes here where you can now input your financial data. So the first set of boxes here, that's your historical. You're just going to go through your financials. And, you know, when we're talking about your financials, we're talking about some pretty top line data. We're not, this isn't going to ask you for something very granular like you know, your salary line or your marketing department expenses, right? This is going to ask you for cases sold, net sales, the cost of those sales, and it will ask for your direct marketing expense. So here you'll see the box for input for historical financial data. Now, we did add a lot of tips, guidance, very industry specific education and guidance right into this tool. We actually enjoy this part a lot because it's always kind of guiding you. So you'll see that throughout this workflow, we have certain links, you know, hypertype links that are blue and underlined. You can click on those, and sometimes we have some info buttons that will pop up a whole lot of information. So just to give you an example here, we click on cost of sales there, and it's going to tell you exactly what should go into cost of sales. Maybe your accounting department is handling cost of sales slightly different. We do suggest that probably you go ahead and make sure that you're sticking to this definition for BEValuator's sake to give you the proper value. But full guidance of really what's going into cost of sales, direct marketing as well, a full definition and all the different components that you should be thinking about. So from there, and of course, you input your pro forma financials and you're moving forward. We really like this screen. This is what we call the financial metrics dashboard, because this is kind of a checkpoint for you. So you've created a scenario where you start off on an idea of a scenario, and then you input the financials, but those financials are just dollar amounts, right? So what does that really mean from like, what story are you creating here? This is a checkpoint for you to say, okay, so I started off thinking I was going to do a moderate growth scenario. Does this represent a moderate growth scenario? So you start looking, okay, well, I'm going to look at my case volume and net sales. I'm just going to focus on net sales here. My last 12-month growth rate, you know, historical year, I did 52%. That was last year. But we have a certain marketing initiative that we have a whole lot of, confidence in. We expect 133% growth in the next year. And from there, we're going to taper it down. This is a startup use case. So that 52% growth is really probably just a very much an initial, like we're, getting our foot in. And then from there, we're head on 133% growth. And then we're going to kind of taper down there as we reach a more mature level. And then we also had a objective here from a margin perspective of what we were hoping to achieve from a cost after contribution after advertising and promotion. And so you see here, we had a negative margin first few years as expected. We're a startup and we're not going to look at it from that perspective. But in this scenario, he said, let's at least by year 8 try to hit a 40% margin. That is actually a very good margin, but we threw it in here. Let's see what it looks like. And so you see that performance. This is a great checkpoint. This is one of those things I'd copy right out of here and throw it into a pitch deck, throw it into, this is a very valuable piece of information here. And then from there, we go into that qualitative overlay that we were talking about. So we already at this point technically have a valuation for you. The quantitative model has worked, but like I said, there are certain qualitative characteristics that no multiple out there. You could go get the historical acquisitions, pull their multiples, pull their financials. None of that quantitative data is going to really get that extra piece of information that comes from the brand story, or just from any characteristic of that brand. And we try to do that with the quality of growth scorecard and then the profit stability scorecard. And you can see here we have various more granular categories under quality of growth. I'll go back to this information button. This is also just a wealth of information as far as how to look at these components, these value components. So if I go in here, we click that info button. Here we see direct marketing spend. Great information on here. What is direct marketing spend? Why does it matter? Then how the evaluator itself is assessing the marketing spend. And then what can you actually do about that? How to optimize it, or what to be looking for. And at a minimum, what this really does, and I come back to at the end of the day, you have an investor ready report where you could tell a story. So when you're going in here and you're inputting your financials, you're selecting your qualitative characteristics, and you're reading this, what you're really doing is you're prepping yourself to have that conversation with, whether it be with an investor, or whether it be maybe you're not looking for an investor, but you just want to have that strategic look forward, because one day you may want to have that investor conversation. You want to be looking at it from that path forward. So you really are creating those conversation points. Just going to go, for the sake of time, go through some of these pretty quickly. You got spirit category, premium pricing categories, and we can even show you what that's going to look like from a drop-down perspective. So here, this is asking what spirit category best describes the brand, and you have the various whiskey types, and then vodka, rum, tequila, gin, brandy, and liqueurs there. So go ahead. In this case, we have a tequila, even asking you about your brand's position from a term on pricing terms. So we're going to select premium. And the rest of these auto-filled, but you'll see that there's some of them are yes and no's, some of them are going to be more descriptive type answers. Going over to profit stability, it's the same idea. You've got an info button here, great guidance, supply chain strength and scalability. We worked quite a bit on this one. It's the supply chain, given just all the attention to it. We really wanted to provide a wealth of information here. And it really guides you on how to go ahead and answer all these selections. So got strong relationship with producer here. We're going to say we could scale this. We have high confidence of being able to scale this in at least in the midterm from 3 to 7 years out. All this is the same assessment that an acquirer would essentially be doing when applying a valuation onto your brand. So next step, you're seeing this this is essentially a video recording, but it's running this fast inside of the BEValuator, kind of going through your valuation. It's generating all the individual reports, combining them, and really that was well under a minute there, you've got a report ready to go. And I know Matt's going to be touching on this quite a bit more when we go over the subscriptions, but you do have what we call draft and final reports, and Matt will kind of go through that. But just to show you what one of these reports look like, I'm going to pull up here. So this is our Westra example. I'm going to full screen this for you all. Let's see, full screen. Okay. So this is what one of those reports essentially looks like. So when we're talking about an investor ready report, you can print this out and it's ready to go. It's branded, it's branded with BEValuator right on top. It knows that you've gone through this calculator. Anybody that you give this to is going to understand that you've gone through this workflow. You've inputted these inputs, and this has gone through a very well tested algorithm. For the most part, we know everybody's just going to look at this executive summary right on top. That's all anybody cares about. What's that number? and how does it grow over time, right? So in this case, we had a 10-year pro forma. This was a startup, so early on value was very, very low. But you see here, it's kind of growing into and we'll get into that exit period in a bit here, but it's growing into a $97.8 million valuation. And the highest exit is over here in year 8 at 197. It kind of pairs down, but that's just what comes with valuation. Models are going to, it's never going to be this kind of straight line, but you have this idea that you've built up to this level of valuation. And so then you have a whole bunch of multiples right on top, net sales multiples, cases sold multiple, however you want to have your discussions. We know, different people have different preferences on how they want to have these discussions. Now, what we do a little comparison to that, earlier what John was saying, that a lot of times, you see a lot of these presentations out there that are just using rule of thumb multiples. So we kind of do a little comparison where if you had just done a rule of thumb, but look at how dynamic the BEValuator is. It starts with a higher multiple and it kind of drops down as your volumes are increasing. But if you look at valuation, it wasn't dropping down. Going back to page 1, it's actually going up. And that's that pairing where we see it's done imperfectly. It's not a very robust exercise when it's done quickly, or if you hire somebody that doesn't really understand the industry, where it's new to doing valuations. But you see your value climbing because you're getting that scale, you're getting that maturity, and it's right sizing your multiple as you go forward. And so then you have a detailed report that's going to lay it all out. If you're interested, it talks about what did the quantitative model come up with at first. And then I'm not going to go through this in detail. This is going to be all out there on our website for your review. But you could see what the quantitative model is doing in section 1. You could see then in section 2 the qualitative adjustments that we were talking about. This is the overall adjustment, but if you want to dive down even further, we have the quality of growth score. You see here the score starts pretty low at 2, and if you remember, this is a startup. A 2 is not a big deal for a startup. Yes, 2 is called an opportunity for improvement, but that's another way of saying startup, right? Like every startup is an opportunity for improvement. And so you look at that and go, yeah, as expected, but look at my success in getting to where I need to get to. I'm at a 5+. And obviously this is a very good use case that we're putting forward here, but it's the idea that at least you have those metrics of what matters from a quality of growth perspective. And then we have a write-up here of where you were strong and what particular categories were challenges. And a little bit of a write-up there as far as how you should be looking at this. Once again, pair that back with the application itself, those info buttons, very useful. And then we have the profit stability score here. Same idea as the quality of growth section. And then just so that you remember what you even put in this particular run in the first place, we have a summary of inputs as an appendix here at the back of this report. So I'm going to, oops, I stopped sharing. I'm going to go back. Okay. Meant to get out of full screen mode, but I accidentally stopped sharing. And one thing I do want to show about these reports real quick, and then I'll hand it off to Matt, is you do have this report library right in here. And you'll see that you have the ability to save your final reports, or if you had a report but you didn't want to finalize it yet, you do have this ability to save draft reports. But this goes back to that entire idea that this is really built to be a scenario tool, and you can run all these scenarios and save them right into your account. I know a lot I digest, but I'll hand it off to Matt to talk about the subscriptions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jose. Appreciate it. I'll just give you a second to get the PowerPoint back up if you don't mind.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. So hopefully, let's see how we're on time. Okay. Perfect. All right. Oh, I'll let you just jump, Jose, if you could go to slide. We can start here actually on strategic planning. So real quick, so thank you everyone, by the way, for sitting with us today. Hopefully at this point you have a good sense now, at least of what the BEValuator is, why we created it. Now Jose is showing you kind of how it looks, or how it works, I should say, and what it looks like, and then how it can help you right, as a brand owner or a brand manager looking to kind of grow in your down your path. We went with a subscription model. So what I'm going to get into now is the cost of that. But before I jump right into that, I just want to kind of reiterate why we went with the subscription model. And the key here comes all the way back to what Jose was just referencing with this strategic planning with scenario analysis. We don't want this application to be just your typical one-off, spit some stuff in, you get one report, and that's it. We want this to be a dynamic thing where you can go in, create scenarios, as Jose said, play with your different variables, learn where the drivers of value are to the people who are going to be interested in buying your brand or investing in your brand down the line. So with the scenario analysis and the subscription model, you get to go in unlimited times, as many times you want throughout a month, quarter, day, year, do these drafts, play with different levers, pull different variables. Net sales go up a little, net sales go down. What if my cap looked like this? What if my margins increased or didn't? And get together, I think, a lot of like robust, great info out of that. So with that in mind, Jose, if you could go to the next slide to actually show people how we price this out. Okay, so as we said, it is a subscription plan. We have two options here, a starter and a premium. In both cases, we wanted to declare from the top, there's no auto renewal. So we're not trying to Planet Fitness you here and get you to forget you signed up for the gym membership. And, you know, you sign up for 1 year. And if you would like to renew, our goal is that we've given you such a powerful, useful tool at such a cost-effective rate that it's going to be no doubter for you to renew. They do work both starter and premium on a single brand license basis. So if you have one brand, you get one subscription. If you have, and one subscription, when I say one brand, multiple SKUs, all that, right, rolled into valuing that brand. If you happen to have a portfolio of multiple brands, that is where we would recommend getting multiple subscriptions, because you're going to want one subscription at a per brand level. That's really how the app is built around, and the tool will work best in that way. Next thing here, on the starter side, you'll see we have one report included, and on the premium side, we have 5 reports included. What I really want to clarify here is those refer to final reports that Jose was just showing you. You can generate these final reports that you print out as a PDF, email, create copies that you can add into your pitch decks, give to potential investors, potential buyers, maybe for your executive team when you're doing a quarterly follow-up and things like that. Those are the ones that are limited in the amount of formal reports, but you do get unlimited drafts for that scenario analysis. So it's not like you can only, go in and create one scenario and that's it under this. You're getting those unlimited scenarios that you save as drafts. And it's just once you come up with a scenario that you feel very confident in, that you want to present in a formal manner, that's when you convert. And that's where we have the limits in terms of how many reports you can do under each plan. Under the starter plan, it'll be $249 for any additional reports, and under the premium, it's $199. And in both cases, you have access for 12 months. And when we say access, that is referred to going in to use the tool to generate reports and generate new scenarios. You will have lifetime access to your library, though. Any reports you've created, once they're created, whether they be scenario drafts or final reports, they are going to be sitting in your library repository. And even if you don't renew the next year or anything like that, you'll still always be able to log in under your account, see all your reports, pull them, save them, generate them again, things like that. The access for 12 months is just for creating any new reports. So that's the basic idea behind what we went with in terms of what you get with your subscription here. We can jump ahead, Jose, to the next one. Shocker here, we recommend the premium version, the one we put in nice colors and everything. And here's why, though. So, right, you're getting those 5 official reports that you're gonna, as opposed to the 1 official report. And again, the drafts that you can create, you won't be able to print those out in a way that's going to be, easily to hand it into like a nice formal deck or giving to potential investor meetings and things like that. So I just want to clarify again. What I think is important to keep in mind is when we talk about why I want the premium plan and your ability to create multiple reports and we have a reference here to, like, let's say you're a startup, right? And we recommend that people do at least 3 scenarios as a startup if you're going to present to potential investors or your board of directors. Let's say you go with a steady growth accelerated growth, and breakout growth. The idea here, though, is you're going to put together multiple stories, right? We want to, and Jose alluded to this earlier, when we talk about our brands to potential stakeholders, we want to come to them, looking like we've done the most amount of due diligence. And we want to show them that we've seen all the different scenarios that could play out. Story 1, story 2, story 3. We want to run these scenarios and then compare as the future becomes the present, check against what we set out, right? If I thought we're going to have extreme growth in this one scenario, once we get there, do we not see that, or do we see even more than we expected, right? We check everything against our KPIs and what our projections were, as every good, I think, manager and entrepreneur would do. And then we can reevaluate, pivot where we need to, and things like that. When we come to the table, I think I've luckily in the last few years, I've gotten to sit in a few meetings and some of the consulting work I've done with new brands looking to raise funds. And that is key when you're dealing with investors. They're going to want to see that you've thought of, okay, if the industry takes a turn for this way or that way, what does that mean for the final big goal for us, which is value? Last thing I'll say on this, I just want to reiterate the tool and why I think this can be so powerful for your brand. When we think about what this tool actually does at like a very layman's approach, Jose is the expert on the stats and John is the expert on the industry. When I think about it, I know John has been frequently approached by entrepreneurs to help assess what their brand's value is to a large, let's say, global drinks company, right? And whether they're a new brand or an established brand, they've often come to him and wanted to get some insight on, hey, what do you think my brand will be worth? And what they're really doing is seeking advice on how to make their brands as attractive as possible to these big buyers. And when that's what they're trying to do, I guess what I would say is what you're really seeking is guidance to connect a long-term goal, which is value growth, with actions that can be taken today, right? And so you want to understand the drivers of that value as a key success factor, whether they be, and I know Jose showed it before, when you get this tool, you're going to enter in your cases sold, your projected cases sold. What if my net sales and cost of sales, direct marketing spend, get to play around with all those drivers and see how that affects your final value. So understanding those drivers is such a key. I iterate it enough that it's such a key value in your success. And valuation as a strategic goal, I think a lot of people forget this, is no different than, let's say, targeting revenue or bottom line growth, right? People think in terms of revenue and bottom line growth, and you'll have your KPIs for that. Valuation, your final valuation, that should be a targeted goal just as well. And so what we're trying to do here is empower you with that information, along with the unique characteristics of your own brand, right? Your own story. And with that, you can, as an entrepreneur, you can develop a bit of a strategic plan, I'd say, with the KPIs focused on optimal use of resources in your company for that value creation. And again, it all comes back to the subscription model, which allows you to create all these case scenarios, play with the different factors, pull those levers, and see how it adjusts along the way. So with that in mind, I would like to hop over to a couple frequently asked questions. And then I think these are ones we've identified. Some of these might apply more to current customers rather than people who haven't used the tool yet. But I'll touch on this real briefly. I'm just looking at time. And then I want to make sure we open it up to your just general questions. So first thing I wanted to touch on here, a few of these I think we've already answered in the presentation. By the way, this is all available on our website. So if you get a chance, you have any more, you can go on. Each one of these has a drop down. I'll give you more information. But one big thing to touch on is this an official brand appraisal? And so you could probably guess the true answer to that is, of course, no, it's not an official brand appraisal, right? Because we're giving you a tool for valuation and strategic planning where the user can enter your own data and then pair that with our analysis and our algorithms that we've come up on how buyers will typically view that. But to do a true analysis, you would need, of course, it would be much more expensive in terms of auditors coming in and confirming all the data you've put in, things like that. So that's not what we're trying to get at here. Think of it more as a very useful brand valuation strategic planning tool. When you think of, let's say, even like Zillow, for instance, right? We might go on there and look at what Zillow's estimating your general house is worth, and it's nice to see it go up and things like that. So think of it in that way. Next thing I just want to touch on, I think might be important to a lot of people, is my data kept confidential? Yes. So our goal here is we're not selling your data to any third party or anything like that. Our goal is just to build you this useful tool, and you like it so much that you keep coming back. That's what our business model is based around. I hope most people assume that, but in today's day and age, I think it's important to point that out. And we do have a few topics here on a few questions about this exit period. You might have noticed it. And Jose, you can go to the next slide. I'm not going to get too into the weeds on that now. Excuse me. But let's just, the reason I don't want to get into it too much is because I think this is more useful for once you've already been using the tool. But you may have noticed when Jose brought up that report earlier, there was a section highlighted exit period, what your value looks like during your exit period. And then the previous period is kind of what we refer to as the build period. And just the big important thing we wanted to point out for anyone who does sign up and dives into thing is when you see an exit period, because I think a lot of people are focused on that, this is the time when we believe your brand has hit all the thresholds based on all the historical analysis we've seen that it would be attractive to a strategic buyer. You might not, depending on what your actual sales are, as well as what your projected sales are, when you start putting those variables in, you might not hit an exit period. And that's okay too. That's good for two reasons. One, you can learn, okay, let me adjust some things in my future and see if that gets me into an exit period. But two, even if you don't, that's not a problem. You're still building value. You're just not necessarily getting to that historical, let's say level of, oh, I'm going to sell for, multiple hundreds of millions of dollars. But the app will still show you how much value you've been building, what your brand is worth, all during that build value stage. So it can help you in a multitude of ways there. Last thing I would like to point out before I fully move on is really at the end of the day, we set out to build a tool that can, I would say, answer this question of value, which I know I've repeated a lot, but more importantly, to reiterate, it communicates those value drivers, right? So our goal is to enable you guys as brand entrepreneurs, as brand managers, to align your brand strategy with your long-term value creation goals, right? I think a lot of times we just have the idea of like, oh, I want to sell for this big number, and then here's my story of everything I'm doing with my brand. Well, now what you can do is see that big number, put some variables in, and start to track, okay, as I move these things around, what does that look like in the long term? So at the end of the day, I think the best way to do that now is with BEValuator. What better way to do it than with a pretty simple application that can get you there at I would say, a very reasonable price. And the last thing I forgot to mention was your typical, when we look back at the pricing, Jose, could you go back to that one more time for me? The pricing model is at this premium and even the starter level, both great values. If you were to go out and get it in, let's say, an individual or firm who does consulting in this area, it could, we looked into this, of course, when we were setting our pricing. Those firms or individuals could cost anywhere from, let's say, $7,000 up to $20,000 to do a full deck that you might bring to an investor meeting. We feel that this allows you to do that and to do it multiple times in a much more cost-effective way, and puts the power in your hands, right? So where you get it instantly and you can turn it over as quickly or as long as you want to take with it. So on that, I believe I'll hand it back to you, John, to talk a little bit about the charity that's linked to this, and then we'll open it up to questions with everybody else.
I just want to mention that a big part of this whole program for me and for our team, and it goes back to my days at MHW, the Liquid for Life program is the program we've been involved with for many, many years. And a fair amount of the proceeds from any model we created were going to go to the Liquid for Life. And it's building, generally, just to give you a quick idea, in places like Haiti and Africa, where we've been active, working with originally the St. Patrick's Fathers out of Chicago and Dublin, Cross Catholic down in Florida. So we don't do this. These are select charities that are great at it, that can go into these places where, 100 feet under a village, people have no access to water while it's 100 feet below them. And so on average, for $12,000 to $14,000, you can create basically a pump that you see on the screen there. And so that's what that's about. And so we we know that water is the magic behind every spirit, right? And so we understand places around the world where they just don't have that access. So that's what this is about, and know that there's something behind this subscription that's more than just beverage alcohol. And then on the last quick slide there, I think. Oh, yeah. So anyway, we'll end it there. Again, I just want to reiterate what Jose showed you on that first screen. And we're just really talking about what's important in terms of just a pure brand. So we end at that contribution margin by putting in that information. And actually, if you put your cost of sales by a percentage, it automatically calculates. There were some things that we try to make it as easy as possible, especially when you're going out 5 or 6 or 7 years. That one screen can take, if you have your data, can take you a few minutes. The whole process, when you answer those questions, literally you're done in 20 minutes. And then you can see the report. There was that one summary that had a lot of numbers. That's basically a byproduct of what you did, but it's putting it in a form that's easy for you to read. Any questions? We may not get to all of them today. You see the address there. And again, we really feel we tried to make this, trust me, as reasonable as possible to get as many players in, because our goal truly is to help brands win, spirit brands, because that's where we think the future M&A activity is going to be, for the reasons I told you. And every win for you is a win for BEValuator as we go down the road. So thanks again for all of your time in there. And then Ross, you might have seen a couple questions come in, and maybe you could fire away.
Absolutely. I would, we have had some questions come in from the group, so I'd love to turn these over to you guys. One thing that came in, and I know it was mentioned a little bit in the frequently asked questions, but it's something that I know I care a lot about. So I would like to turn to Matt again. There was a question about sort of the privacy policy and the data security that you guys have. Can you just talk to us a little bit more about protecting the data of the customers who are coming in with BEValuator and utilizing their internal numbers to make sure they get the most valuable information, but they're still staying protected on their side?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and Jose and John, feel free to chime in as well. But really, at the bottom line is your data comes in. It is, we hold it in, a very secure, I guess, like application that we have behind it. We are not sharing that data with anyone, and take all the most important measures to make sure that it can never be accessed, right, by anybody like that. But there's no, and you'll see in our terms of service, and you can go onto our website, click our privacy policy, terms of service, and things when you'd be signing up, and read through that in great detail. I'm sure if you have lawyers and things like that, they can look through it as well. But our main goal here is to allow you to harness your data, right, to get the as much use out of it as you can. In no way, shape, or form would we be utilizing your data for a third party or for us to profit off it. We have a note, I believe, on the website that down the line, the data in aggregate, if it was ever useful for the subscribers to see anonymized aggregate data, as once the site was big enough that we had enough users, that if we could see some major trends that might be useful for subscribers to see just on a whole as the industry, that we could provide that to you. But that would all be anonymized and in the aggregate, not nothing in terms of individual brands or sharing their data in any way, shape, or form that the brand themselves, wasn't utilizing.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as someone who spent 25 years working with thousands of brands and products, and making sure that confidentiality was critical, well, I use the same mindset. I'll just say we understand. Yeah, it's critical, and but anyway, and some of it, again, because a lot of it can be what if scenarios and things like that, it's really better in the hands of the folks that actually created it, because you can't read it. It wouldn't make sense, some of it, to me, because it's their answers and so forth. But conscious of time, you got another one?
Yeah, the other thing I add is that your account is password protected. You set your password, so we definitely recommend, creating a password that is strong on your account. But we use all the standard security standards over the application and the internet.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. And we are coming up on time, so we just have time for one more question that I'd love to throw to you guys. Jose, this might be for you. As you're building these brand models and figuring out what's going on, obviously BEValuator is a tool because there's a lot of brands that are looking for investors and for acquisitions. How often is the sort of baseline data being updated, and is this sort of a dynamic tool that, when someone is putting in their information a year from now, they're not utilizing the same sort of base metrics that they would a year ago?
So we definitely have the goal of constantly updating it as acquisitions are coming through. The way I would describe that is that we are trying to strike a balance to make sure that, let's say there's an acquisition out there that kind of gives new information. Like every new multiple, every new acquisition comes with a wealth of data. We're going to look at it, make sure that the data, first of all, is of good quality, that we have the right data. We're going to look at it and make sure that it isn't some kind of outlier or way too unique of a case that we don't want to alter our model. But we will then, if we assess that, okay, let's bring it in, we will go through our change management process of updating the model. So it is really a balance, because today we are confident in the model specification, but we want to be confident in future model specifications, but we're not just set and done. So it's all about a balance.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
Ross, I was saying earlier, I said this, and it's very, very true. The superior exits, those transactions, they are rare, and you have to be careful about what you see and what's behind some of the transaction historically. There were a lot of ones I said to Jose, why isn't that included in our regression analysis? And he'd say to me, no, that's an outlier for this, this, and this. I'm like, well, it's hurting our value, that kind of thing. So he's very, very careful, as is Matt, as finance guys. I would tend to be a little bit more liberal, but anyway, I got to listen to them. But the point is,
Well, sometimes you do challenge us and we relook at it and go, I see your point. There's something there. And
yeah,
sometimes we do stick to not including it, and sometimes it's
yeah,
hey, there's value there. Let's bring it in.
right. And there are, but it's a great question, because again, there are other factors going on as well that can change, even deal structures. And as a matter of fact, Discus, at their recent convention, they had a great group of bankers, investment bankers, talking about that. But deals are different today, right? I was involved in a deal recently as on the board of, let's say, Blue Chair Bay, Kenny Chesney's brand. The structure of a deal like that, and again, this is public information, you read about it, was different. I was on the board of Castle Brands and selling Jefferson's bourbon to Pernod Ricard. Very different mindsets, because times have changed a little bit. But the underlying stuff, if you look back over 15 years, there's a lot of consistency is what we really learned. And the people sitting in those big offices around the world, the global drinks companies, they have a certain models in there, and they're pretty consistent with it on how they see those metrics. So anyway.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. And I know we had a couple more people coming in with questions, but we are hard on time. So if you have any more questions for our experts here, you can reach out to them, support@BEValuator.com. If you have anything for Discus, please reach out to us, membership@distilledspirits.org. We would love to help you out. If you are interested in tuning into more panels, we have Ask the Experts most Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. We have a lot of wonderful members speaking on these events, and we would love to see you there. If you are interested in being an expert on one of our panel members, we have members speaking on them. If you are interested in membership and having this as part of what you can do as part of your Discus membership, again, reach out to us, membership@distilledspirits.org. I want to thank everyone for being here. Distilledspirits.org/events is where you can look for upcoming webinars that we have going on. There will be a copy of this recording and the slides from this webinar being sent out to everyone who has registered. I will look for that sometime next week. And I want to thank everyone for being here. And I want to especially thank our 3 experts for joining us and teaching us all a little thing today. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, everybody, for joining. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.